Good afternoon, everybody. Looks like you're very excited today. Must be something very important that's about to happen. You agree with me? Yes. Before we talk, I'm going to introduce Rhiannon Bennett, who is a Musqueam band member and an active member of our community. She volunteers her time with a variety of community organizations, including the BCNDP. She served as the Delta South constituency president and as a member of the BCNDP Women's Rights Committee and Aboriginal Caucus. Rhiannon is well known for asking the tough questions in a manner that encourages engagement and dialogue. Professionally, she works with Indigenous youth and families. The overarching themes of her work are decolonization and reconciliation. In 2015, Rhiannon was the first Indigenous person elected to the Delta Board of Education. Rhiannon is passionately working towards creating a more equitable world for all people. Rhiannon.
Nisep Coquitlam, Atana, Humathquim Osh, E. Hunkaminum Kan Osh Moch, Ait Nisqualam and Zequitsnala, Antha, Rhiannon Bennett, Tlitsnak, Humathquim. My dear friends and relatives, it gives me really good feelings to see all of you here today for such an exciting occasion. It's really my pleasure to welcome all of you here to the unceded lands of the Musqueam people and the lands that the Hunkaminum speaking people have been steward of since the very first sunrise. It's really my pleasure to be here in support of Peter, for someone who understands what reconciliation means, that it's not just empty words, that we need action to go behind those words, and to understand our connection, how reconciliation has to come rooted in the land, that we need to protect our waters and we need to protect our lands. And I really value Peter's efforts to keep my waterways safe, to keep our fish safe, and that means keeping our people safe. So I just really raise my hands to Peter for his efforts that I've seen him have over the years, and welcome all of you here today to hear the words from what Peter is very excited to share with us today. So, hi Sepka, thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Raj Chauhan, MLA for Burnaby Edmonds, and I'm Peter's twin brother. I think you already knew that, right? Yes. We are so happy to be here, but before we start, I want to introduce some of the elected officials who are here. His Worship Jonathan Cote, Mayor of New Westminster, is here. Patrick Johnson is here. Another City Councillor, Chuck Puckmeyer, is here. And Bill Harper is here as well. From New Westminster also we have school trustees Mark Gifford, James Jansen, and Mike Ewan. And from all the way from Burnaby, we have Councillor Sab Dhaliwal and Acting Mayor of Burnaby. We also have two new candidates. You know the provincial election is coming up, right? Yeah. Just in case if you didn't know that. So one is Aman Singh, running in Richmond, Queensborough for BCNDP. I also have my niece running in Burnaby Deer Lake, Ann Kang. There's Ann. Right there. Good. Thank you. Friends, thank you so much for coming today. It's an occasion, this is a time we've been waiting for a long time. You know, our country, our nation is at a stage where we need a very strong leadership. leadership which will not only bring our party, our members together, but also to show the leadership to the world, to show some more compassion, more mature leadership rather than what we see on the other side of the line. And the person that who is going to put our party together to make sure that our party is strong, it's ready for the next election to take over, is the only person that I believe, I'm sure you believe, and you join with me, is nobody but Peter Julian. Peter was first elected in 2004 in Burnaby, and also some parts on New West. Now he's New Westminster Burnaby. So there's some boundaries changed. But we still love him. I love him really because he and I have worked together for so long to make sure that our people are represented in Ottawa at every day. Peter is known for his compassion, his understanding, and he even has broken the record to speak for more than 14 hours in the Parliament of Canada. So that's the kind of leader, that's the kind of strong leadership we need in Canada today. It gives me great pleasure and honor to give you my brother, my friend, Peter Julian, the next leader of NDP.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It is so good to be in my hometown, accompanied by family and friends and neighbors and my bosses, of course, who are my constituents in New Westminster and Burnaby. Now, months ago, as you know, I started on a journey to start a conversation about the future of our Canada. Talked to many people, and many of them have urged me to run for the leadership of the NDP. I've had hundreds of conversations, and I've come to a decision that I wanted to share with each of you in our communities of New Westminster and Burnaby first. Alors, mes amis, je suis ici pour vous annoncer que je me présente comme candidat au poste du chef du nouveau Parti démocratique du Canada. I am here to announce that before you all, that I am running to become the next leader of the New Democratic Party of Canada. Now, we know the last few decades have been tough ones for families both here and across the country. The loss of so many good jobs, the fraying of the social safety net, record levels of family debt and homelessness. We can do better, and the NDP can bring change. It's time to make the priority regular folks rather than the rich and the well-connected. When we look at the founders of our movement, including Tommy Douglas, whose old office I now inhabit on Parliament Hill, I can tell you there's a lot of wisdom in those walls there. When we look at the founders and the pioneers of our movement, what stands out is their courage and vision. Times have changed, and the challenges facing us are different. But what never changes is our courage to speak truth to power and our determination to build a better world. Canada needs a strong national NDP to move us forward and to build that Canada where no one is left behind. Now, this campaign is not about any one person. It's about all of us, and it's about building a Canada where all Canadians matter. This is a conversation that I will have in the coming months with the grassroots of our party across the length and breadth of our land. We need to empower our grassroots, and we need to empower all Canadians. Cette campagne, c'est notre campagne à tous. Il ne s'agit pas d'une personne seulement. C'est une campagne qui concerne tout le monde et qui vise à bâtir un pays où personne n'est laissé pour compte. C'est pourquoi il nous faut un dialogue continu, un dialogue que nous allons avoir ensemble ces prochains mois. C'est ça ma vision. Canadians share fundamental values. I think those values are fairness and inclusion and stewardship of the environment. We believe in working hard and taking care of one another. I believe that these values, shared by so many Canadians, are values that we simply do not see in Ottawa, neither from the former government of Mr. Harper or the new government of Mr. Trudeau. In so very many ways, it is business as usual in Ottawa, and nothing has changed. We can do better, and I think it's time to bring to Ottawa the same fundamental values that we as Canadians share. We believe in fairness, and yet Canadians have seen the opposite of fairness over the last decades, with the growing gap between the top 1% and the vast majority of Canadians. Oxfam recently told us in its report that 2 Canadian billionaires, Mr. Thompson and Mr. Weston, now hold as much wealth as nearly a third of Canadians, 11 million people. What's worse is that as working families struggle under the worst debt loads of our history, more and more of the top 1% pay no taxes at all. In fact, estimates go as high as $1 billion in tax revenue lost, leaving this country every single month, from Canada's wealthiest citizens going to overseas tax havens. This has to change. My vision of the country, what we fight for, has to include a country where no matter how wealthy, no matter how well connected, everyone pays their fair share of taxes. And that means an end to the unfairness that makes a secretary pay more in taxes than their boss, a powerful corporate CEO. And it means putting an end to sweetheart deals with overseas tax havens. Building a fair tax system is only the first step in building the kind of Canada that most Canadians want to see. And that is a Canada of inclusion where nobody is left behind. As many of you know, I worked for years with Canadians with disabilities, and I've seen firsthand how the vision of building an inclusive society that Canadians share has been often cast aside by the obsession of the priorities of the 1% in Ottawa. Canadians with disabilities are the poorest of the poor in Canada. Half of the homeless are Canadians with a physical or mental disability, and we know that there are tens of thousands of Canadians sleeping outside tonight, shamefully, in one of the coldest climates on earth. Now, half of those Canadians who will have to go to a food bank to survive this month have disabilities. This is unacceptable in a country as rich as ours. My vision is for a country where everyone matters and where no one is left behind. And we know we can do so much better. We start by standing on the principle that no one, not one child, not one adult, not one senior, no one should be forced to sleep outside. Everyone should have a home. Everyone should have a roof to sleep under in this country, period, full stop. Pour lutter contre les inégalités, il faut que chaque personne au Canada, chaque enfant, chaque adulte, chaque personne âgée a droit au logement. C'est mon principe. Il n'y devrait pas y avoir un seul sans-abri dans un pays comme le nôtre, surtout quand l'hiver ici est tellement froid et tellement pénible. The truth is, the housing crisis, the homelessness crisis in Canada has accelerated since the Trudeau government has come in. It needs to be treated as the urgent issue it is. And just one story locally illustrates how profound this crisis is and how important it is for us to change Ottawa. John Young is a local senior who always played by the rules, paid his taxes, paid his pension. And yet skyrocketing rents meant he had to give up his apartment. He tried sleeping on the couch of a friend, but that didn't work either. And he was forced to sleep outside on the concrete in an underground parking lot. Ottawa needs to stop funding overseas tax havens for the 1% and start to build affordable housing for Canadians like John Young and so many others. Canadians understand the importance of housing. After the most violent and tragic conflict the world has ever seen, the Second World War, Canadians pushed the government to build housing for hundreds of thousands of men and women in the armed forces that were coming back to Canada. Over 300,000 units were built in just a few years, including the home that Lee May and I live in just a few blocks from here near 10th Avenue. We need to have the same foresight and same determination now as we did then and start a national housing program. If we are less ambitious than they were after the Second World War, we can still build 250,000 housing units in the next 2 to 3 years and put a roof, however modest, over every single Canadian's head. That is our vision for the future. But inclusion starts there, but we have lots more to do. These fundamental values of fairness and inclusion, building a Canada where everyone matters, start with equality of opportunity. There is no better foundation of equality than the right to have access to our education system. Canadians understood this when we built an education system that provided access to every Canadian, from elementary to high school. We recognized that to build equality, no one should be excluded from education if they worked hard and wanted to learn. We have lost, tragically, that notion of equality, and we've also lost that boon to our economy. And we can do so much better. Post-secondary education, college, university, and trade schools should no longer be closed to those who are not rich or those who can't take on the massive debt loads that we are seeing, because this is a mortgage on our nation's future. It's time to treat post-secondary education as the new healthcare. Open doors and end tuition fees to everyone who's willing to work hard and learn, and will reap the benefits of a highly educated population that can fill the jobs of tomorrow and create the jobs of tomorrow. Other countries do it, and it is time for Canadians to do better. My vision is to open the doors to post-secondary education by ending tuition fees for Canadians. We're going to open those doors. We're going to let them come in. That's important for our nation's future. On sait qu'il y a tant de barrières pour empêcher les gens, et surtout les jeunes, d'accéder aux études. C'est inacceptable. Nos étudiants sont notre avenir et l'avenir de notre pays. Il faut permettre à tous les jeunes d'accéder aux études sans leur créer des obstacles financiers. Ma vision est de mettre fin aux frais de scolarité postsecondaire et permettre l'accès aux études à tout le monde ici au Canada. One of the most important ways to include everyone and build equality is to have a strategy to build good long-term employment. Before I was elected to Parliament, I ran a social enterprise, many of you know, that provided access to good jobs for people with disabilities. Often, these Canadians were not able to get in the doors of businesses because maybe there was a ramp missing, or for deaf Canadians, there was no ability for that business to hire a sign language interpreter for the job interview or for the new job training. So we built the Disability Employment Network, and we built those ramps, and we provided those interpreters. And something magical happened. When the barriers were taken down, the disabled employees came to work eager to contribute and remained loyal to that enterprise. Retraining costs went down for the businesses because disabled employees simply work longer in their positions and there is less job turnover. It is absolutely win-win when doors are opened for Canadians with disabilities. Everyone benefits. This is the kind of vision we need for the country. Now, the reality is, and we all know this, over the last 30 to 40 years, we've seen a steady erosion of good jobs in this country. Most jobs today are part-time or temporary, and we've seen a collapse of the manufacturing sector with the loss of 500,000 jobs. Canada is one of the few industrialized countries that has no industrial strategy aside from shipping raw logs, raw bitumen, and raw minerals out of the country to create jobs elsewhere. We can do better. It's time for Canadians to make things again in our country. So our vision for a vibrant, job-intensive, modern economy starts with real investment in education and training and research and development. Canada trails the rest of the industrialized world in patents and PhDs and public investment and research and development. The entrepreneurs of tomorrow are often found working in the Starbucks and McDonald's, the jobs of today, because they have no choice. Governments have been closing the doors of opportunity for decades. We need to open the doors to education and allow those who have acquired the education to contribute their skills to the job market. That will not happen unless we address a chronic lack of public funding for research and development and the complete lack of a national job strategy. Next, our vision involves working with the provinces to change our focus away from raw log, raw mineral, and raw bitumen exports towards value-added exports. And we know that's very important here in BC. We also need to build on the incredible potential of clean energy in our country. Canada has limitless potential for wind, solar, geothermal, tidal, and biomass energy. Over $1 trillion. That's $1 trillion of clean energy investment is expected each of the next few years around the world as clean energy investments far surpass fossil fuel investment. It's time that Canadians benefited from that clean energy revolution that is happening around the world. Les investissements dans l'énergie verte vont dépasser les 1 000 milliards de dollars pour chacune des prochaines années. Si on veut vraiment parler de création d'emplois, il n'y a rien de mieux que de mettre en place les stratégies pour une économie propre, pour que les gens d'ici puissent vraiment en profiter. Ma vision, un virage en profondeur vers les technologies propres et l'énergie renouvelable pour créer les bons emplois du 21e siècle ici au Canada. And our vision also includes a new and progressive approach on trade. Fair trade is built around lifting people up, not pushing them down, as many of the so-called free trade agreements have done. Fair trade respects human rights, labor rights, and works towards alleviating poverty and provides support for good local jobs. Supporting Canadian value-added and manufacturing exports, something that we do not do now, would mean far more jobs for Canadian workers and would address our chronic trade deficit. And to build an inclusive economy, we need the ability of Canadian workers to be able to join unions and negotiate collectively. No single factor has led to the rise of the middle class in Canada as much as the strength and resolve of collective negotiations led by Canadian workers. We need to support that. But building an inclusive society and an inclusive economy means little if we do not succeed as a nation in bringing real, meaningful, and full reconciliation to First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. The poorest communities in Canada, the ones that struggle with high suicide rates and violence, lack of safe water, moldy and crumbling and often non-existent schools and healthcare facilities, and no opportunity, are often First Nations communities. Where has the federal government been as these tragedies have unfolded? After the acts of genocide of the residential schools, the neglect of the federal government, and the ongoing abuse of racism in our country, national reconciliation is urgently needed. This is not the time for hollow speeches or superficial comments, but rather the time for action. School boards, hospitals, police authorities, cities and towns, provinces, businesses, all must be involved in this important national dialogue, journey, and above all, action plan to make our country whole. Last month, I traveled to the northern Saskatchewan community of La Loche, a community that continues to endure high, tragic suicide rates and violence. Last year, Mr. Trudeau visited the community after violence at the local school and in the community left 4 dead. He committed to providing all the supports necessary to the community, and yet 1 year later, nothing has been done. In the town, only one overloaded mental health worker struggles to provide support to a town that is reeling from multiple tragedies. And this pattern has sadly been repeated in so many communities. Our vision of reconciliation is making sure that no community, not La Loche or anywhere else, is left behind. Our vision is that full reconciliation with Indigenous peoples in Canada has to be acted upon at every level, from schools to hospitals to the police and justice systems. Only then can we truly say that we have achieved real and meaningful national reconciliation. Il est urgent et profondément nécessaire de nous réconcilier avec les Premières Nations, les peuples métis et inuits du Canada. Après toutes les promesses brisées, c'est à notre tour de travailler sincèrement pour veiller à ce que la réconciliation se fasse enfin. Ma vision pour notre pays se fonde sur une réconciliation nationale qui mobilise aussi le réseau de la santé, le système d'éducation, la police, le système judiciaire, les entreprises, nos communautés et tous les gouvernements. C'est ce qu'il faut faire pour réussir à relever ce grand défi. Ensemble, nous allons réussir. And that true national reconciliation means that as Canadians, we have to ensure that there is free, prior, and informed consent for resource projects and all projects taking place on the territory of First Nations. And it is resource development that we have managed often so badly in Canada, sacrificing community interest and Canadians' interest to support Bay Street and foreign multinational corporations. This has to change. Nowhere is this more evident than in energy policy. We've seen how seamlessly we have moved from Mr. Harper's raw bitumen export pipeline projects to Mr. Trudeau's raw bitumen export pipeline projects. It is same old in Ottawa. But we know climate change is a profound and disturbing reality that will be accelerated substantially if these projects are built. Climate change means a cost of $2 billion a year this year to our economy, $3 billion next year, $5 billion in 2020, rising up to $90 billion in economic costs each year by 2050, about halfway through the expected length of the pipeline service. Climate change costs our economy and our jobs more and more, let alone that one big spill from these pipelines or tankers would be catastrophic and bring profound consequences. Climate change is a massive ticking time bomb that will explode sometime around or just after 2030, a little over a decade from now. The Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists has recently moved their doomsday clock to read 2.5 minutes to midnight because of climate change. And they say climate change should not be a partisan political issue. This is the closest that the doomsday clock has been to midnight since 1953, at the most dangerous height of the Cold War. We are now, again, very close to midnight for civilization if we do not fight climate change. And yet Mr. Trudeau, with his massive pipeline projects, wants to lock in our economy based on raw bitumen for the next 50 years. He is heedless and irresponsible of the consequences. You can't go up and down, left and right, forward and backward at the same time. We have a clear choice to make. My choice is a future for our children and for our children's children. At 450 parts per million of CO2 in our atmosphere, the respected Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change states that 40% of existing species will become extinct. Scientists tell us that this is the point of no return. We are now at 406 parts per million, and that number is rising about 3 points a year. 3 points a year. We can do the math very simply. 10 to 15 years is all that we have to preserve this planet for our children and their children. And that is why I oppose Kinder Morgan, Keystone Energy East, all of Mr. Trudeau's raw bitumen export pipelines that he wants to be put into place for the next 50 years. We cannot play Russian roulette with our planet. Vous saviez déjà que je m'oppose à Kinder Morgan et à Keystone, mais je veux vous annoncer aujourd'hui que je m'oppose aussi à Energy Est. Les projets de M. Trudeau et de M. Trump vont accélérer le changement climatique. Nous avons quelques années à peine pour mettre fin à cette catastrophe avant qu'il ne soit trop tard. Ma vision est de tout faire pour conserver notre planète pour nos enfants et pour leurs enfants. And the truth is, there are many alternatives to the Trudeau Liberals and Mr. Trump's irresponsible approach on climate change. We need to start transitioning to clean energy like so many other countries are doing. We need an immediate plan for energy efficiency. We share among the coldest climates on Earth, and yet successive federal governments have done nothing to address this challenge. And this is also an extremely effective way to create good, sustainable jobs. Increasing energy efficiency has created almost 1 million jobs in Europe, almost 1 million jobs in the United States, and could create tens of thousands of jobs right here in Canada. Clean energy is also a huge job creator. Imagine that we harness the unlimited power of the wind, the sun, the earth, water, and the tides, and we can see how Canada could create hundreds of thousands of jobs in clean energy with the right leadership. So our vision is to change politics in this country. We have an appointment with destiny in the fall of 2019, just 33 months from now. The next election will not be about polls or money or any of the superficial things our national media love to talk about. The next election is about the future of our country and of our planet. Our vision is about stopping climate change and building a clean energy economy. Our vision is about building a more equal, inclusive society where no one is left behind. Our vision is building true national reconciliation with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Our vision is respecting and honoring the extraordinary diversity of our land and our people. Our vision is to fight hatred in all of its forms, whether that hatred comes in the form of an anonymous tract in the streets or from the statements and actions of the new President of the United States. Our vision is to speak out against it at all times. Notre vision est basée sur le principe qu'un meilleur monde est possible. Et c'est maintenant qu'il faut commencer à le construire. We know we can do better for Canadians and better for our planet. And most importantly, it starts with all of us. Those of us here in the room and other Canadians, whether they are in rural areas or small villages, towns or big cities across this vast land of ours. We need to work together for change. We need to work together to build a better Canada. And we know that a better world is possible. So let's seize the moment together. Merci. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Peter. Thank you for your courage, your understanding, and the leadership to our party and to our country. Thank you so much. Peter, Julian, our next leader. Peter has started a journey today, and that journey will be continued until in October this year when we have our convention. But Peter, I want to assure you, on this journey you are not alone. First of all, you have a wonderful family with you today. your beautiful, wonderful wife, Lee May. Your mom and dad, Ruth and Terry Julian here. Your sister, Randy Wick is here. And brother, Pat Julian is here. And your nieces are here, Charlotte and Hannah are here. Wow. And another important person of the family, Don Wick is here. Your brother-in-law. And each and everyone sitting in this room and standing are with you. We will continue to be with you, Peter, because this is going to be a most challenging journey that you have started today. And it's important that we make sure Peter is successful. It's a question of not only the future of our party, but of our country. So it's a wonderful time. I'm so glad finally Peter listened to us, and we are starting this together. Thank you so much. I also want to thank you, each and every one of you coming today, because we will be seeing each other, working together with each other. Many of the volunteers have already come forward to support Peter, but as we proceed every single day, we will need every single one of you and many, many more. Not only volunteers, but also other resources. It's a big campaign, nationwide campaign, costs lots of money. So anybody who has already not contributed, we will greatly appreciate if you can please contribute to this beautiful cause of ours to have Peter our next leader of NDP. Thank you so much for coming today. Thank you.